Well, ladies and gentlemen, the early vote just keeps getting better and better for Donald Trump. We've got numbers out of North Carolina, Republicans still maintaining a slight lead by around 1.1 point. We've also got Arizona. Last time I checked, Republicans were up by about 6 points. And now Fox News has shifted Arizona into the lean Trump category. That's the first state out of the seven swing states. They've shifted it all. The rest are toss ups. They originally, about a month ago, had Michigan as a lean Democrat. Then they shifted that to a toss up. But now they're moving Arizona. And I would imagine after this, maybe in a few days, they would move Georgia because you could argue the polls in Georgia are better than the polls in Arizona. And Trump might have around an 80 to 85% chance to win Georgia. Maybe it's around 75% chance to win Arizona. But the point is, both Georgia and Arizona right now are clearly at least slight leans to Trump. And I think everyone will be predicting Trump to win both Arizona and Georgia. That's not going to win Trump the election, but that's certainly going to help when it comes to the Sun Belt and then also possibly taking North Carolina as well. A very important state. The early voting in Nevada, we know that's been great. That single handedly, I think, has shifted Nevada in terms of the betting odds by like 15 points. There's been a lot of good news in terms of that. I always caution people with the early voting because it's a snapshot. Really early on in the early voting, you could say, well, Republicans are up by 5. The next day, they might be down by 1, just the way the numbers come in. So it's very important to understand that. We knew Republicans were going to perform a lot better, but when you look at the Pennsylvania early voting, you look at the firewall that they had in 2020, it's been slashed significantly. It's at like 380K the last time I checked. In 2020, it was 1.1 million. Obviously, Democrats only won by 80K. Now, there's a lot to take into account when it comes to the early voting with all the variables. A lot more well, I don't know about a lot more, but there are going to be more Democrats doing day of in person voting because they're not worried about the pandemic. And there are going to be more Republicans doing the early voting because Republicans this cycle are encouraging it. So we don't really know how to scale that exactly. But you would say cutting a 1.1 million vote advantage in terms of the early vote down to 380, 390K, whatever it is, it might even be less than that. It's very, very good news for Donald Trump. How good, we don't know yet. We'll know on election night, that's for sure. We've also got the Nevada early vote numbers. I mean, this is remarkable. Republicans are sitting +6. You do also have 26% as other, which is not Democrat or Republican. They're very likely going to be voting either Democrat or Republican. So we'll see who those people swing to. But still, Nevada, you're sitting +6. Arizona, you're sitting around +7 right now. I know there was good early vote numbers coming out of Georgia, especially the rural counties. Day one of early voting in Georgia, the enthusiasm was way up. Pennsylvania, the numbers look a lot better. So the early voting looks very, very good right now. By the way, is this real? So Shannon Sharp did an interview with Kamala Harris, and it was like an ad for Black Ops 6. I mean, there were 3 Black Ops 6 ads. There it is right there. They've got DraftKings as well, but it was like huge with Black Ops 6. I mean, this is an interview with someone that's trying to be the president in like a week, and you can see, I mean, seriously, 32K likes, 73K dislikes. Every interview that this woman does when it comes to like a long form sit down with some influencer, it goes horrible, and the video tanks completely. We've also got this breaking out of Pennsylvania. Republicans have just halted the Democratic firewall growth. I think the firewall might have been hacked. I think something happened to it. The new requests 20K versus around 12K. The new returns right around 30K versus 30K. The firewall is 381K, and it only grew by 700 votes. So yeah, I was right. It was 380, around 380 to 390. That was their current firewall. We've also got this. Kamala and her people are just, what a horrible campaign this is. So Joe Rogan says, also for the record, the Harris campaign has not passed on doing the podcast. They offered a date for Tuesday, but I would have had to travel to her, and they only wanted to do an hour. So Rogan is helping their campaign by not accepting this. Do you know how bad that would have been if Rogan? By the way, one of the reasons that it took so long for Trump to do Rogan was that Rogan wanted Trump in the studio because it just makes his podcast better. You know, I agree with Rogan, and it might be like a little small thing, but if you're a big name podcaster and you've got this studio and there's the same backdrop and everything like that, when you travel, it just feels disingenuous. When the podcaster is having to travel for the person, for the guest, it's totally disingenuous, and it would be a horrible look for Harris. So Rogan is doing the right thing, and also she only wanted to do an hour long. That's another thing where I think Rogan wanted the 3 hours with Trump, and he's like, "Are you kidding me? That's the two things that I didn't want to have happen. And now Kamala Harris, who's totally undeserving, and it's just so unlikable. Their entire campaign is so unlikable. It's like I don't have time for that. Like Trump, he makes time. He does 3 hours. He goes to Austin, Texas. And it's like Kamala Harris is too good for that. You're going to come to me. We're only doing an hour. We're going to pre screen. You're only allowed to ask me certain questions. This would make her more unlikable. Rogan is really helping her by not accepting this. If she wants to do it, she should go to Austin, Texas, do 3 hours just like Trump did, and that's that. But it's just funny. What a pampered baby. You have to travel to me and it's 1 hour. And it's like, dude, there's no way if I'm Rogan, I'm accepting that. If Trump can come here, you can come here. That's ridiculous. Oh yeah, she must be real busy. She does like one rally a week. Yeah, she's real busy. It's just, it's ridiculous. But there is that. We've also got North Carolina. This is a tie poll, but it looks like the change is positive for Trump. So Trump +1, Harris -2. So it looks like Trump cut into the lead there, whatever the Survey USA poll. So listen, North Carolina, a lot of these polls I've seen have been very close. Michigan, Emerson, very, very close there. Trump sitting +1. And yeah, so I'm not sure we're going to get a massive surge either way in the final days when it comes to a lot of these swing states. However, I do think, and really what Fox did here is, yeah, Arizona is becoming a lean Republican, and so is Georgia. And if that happens, I mean, the Democrats, we all know what it is, guys. We're not going to sit here and pretend anything else. They need to win the Rust Belt. The Democrats do. That's it. Based on the polling, you could argue it's close enough in the Rust Belt to where they could still win those 3 states and get to 270 with the Republicans taking the Sun Belt. However, Pennsylvania still looks very good for Trump. I think Trump's going to end up winning all 7 of them. But their strategy at this point, if you are the Democrats, let's not kid ourselves. They're going for broke in the Rust Belt. And that's just the bottom line. And right now, the early vote looks great in Georgia. It looks good in North Carolina. It looks great in Arizona. It looks really good in Nevada. It looks good in Pennsylvania. And there's a lot more enthusiasm this time around for Trump. But again, a lot of that is also Trump telling people to vote early. He didn't say that in 2020, but it's going to help Republicans because inevitably more people are going to vote because you allow for the early voting. You don't pigeonhole yourself into day of voting where some people can't, maybe something happens. It's better to do the early voting to make sure you voted when it comes to that. But I still do think there's going to be a ton of Republicans voting day of. 1,000% Republicans are going to beat Democrats by a lot in terms of day of voting. But when it comes to the vote count, that's going to be a little bit different. Like when you're counting Pennsylvania, for example, we know Trump normally takes a huge lead because they count the day of voting. There might not be that huge lead there. I still think he's going to lead by at least 9 or 10. But Democrats are not going to be able to make that up like they've been able to in 2020. We remember Trump was up by like 15 points with 60% in. In 2016, he was up by a ton. Hillary closed it, but she didn't beat him. In 2020, obviously, Biden, it took like 4 days to count. He closed it and then ended up winning by 80,000 votes or whatever in Pennsylvania. But what I would say about Pennsylvania is it's looking very, very good for Trump right now. Certainly, it's borderline. You don't want to say it's not on the level that Arizona or Georgia is. But Pennsylvania is the one Rust Belt state you would say it's definitely swinging. And then after that, it would be Wisconsin. And Wisconsin would be like a 60% chance for Trump. And then Michigan would be like a 58% chance for Trump or around there. We've also got this. They're actually polling Oklahoma. Who would have thought? Trump sitting +32 in Oklahoma, +10 in Florida, +16 in Missouri, +10 in Texas. Scott is up by 10 in Texas. Cruz by 5. These are very good polls for Republicans. Look at this. Moreno by 4 in Ohio. It's active vote. I don't know. But I did also see a Kansas poll that had Trump only up 5 from a pollster that supposedly was very accurate in 2020 in terms of Kansas. Listen, liberals have been talking about Kansas shifting to the left for a while. I think Trump will still win Kansas probably by over 10 points, but it is interesting. I mean, Trump's going to win Kansas guaranteed, but it has shifted a little bit to the left. Either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.